Thank you. That's great. Oh, yes.
And because I went to the wrong place the last time I came to a meeting, this is the DRV meeting, right?
It is, yes.
I'm gonna need, oh, sorry, I'm Brian Boyd.
I'm Will.
Sorry,
Yes, I recognize you.
You need the screen? Yeah, I'll need access to the internet, to help you demo things.
Tell us yes or no password.
No password?
Yeah.
I can do that.
And start that on. There we go. Keep running. And then save it with them. Stephanie might join via Zoom. Oh, good. See if anybody. How long have you been back? Yesterday morning. And I went to work today, so I'm home.
Oh, right, you just got back from vacation.
Yes,
Yikes.
yes, so, like, I have jet lag and, re-entry shock. I said, why are we playing this for the April? Anyway. Or move the meeting. Yeah, yeah, well, that's the way it works, so. Glad you got back. Yeah. So that's curious to learn how to use this. Oh, yeah. Map system. So. I'm hoping.
So when I'm giving the demo, I have everything set up on my computer. I guess I can just join the meeting remotely and you can let me share my screen. Will that work?
So, why don't you just connect directly to the display? Well, no, if you share screen, then the Zoom people can see it. Yes, what am I thinking?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Sure.
I just want to use the audio on mine,
Let's
so we
try
don't get the
Let's
echo
try it.
chamber. Okay, so I just need to find.
If you go to the Calais town Calais webpage and then scroll down a bit, you'll see a calendar.
Oh, okay.
And then if you click on the DRB meeting, it will take you. It will show you.
Yes, I saw that today. That's right.
The bottom of the 4 meetings, there are 4 meetings.
Hello, Stephanie, can you hear me okay? Yeah,
There we go. Yes, I can hear you now.
good, oh, good.
All right,
We have, me and Kathy, Brian Boyd, and.
Bill.
Phil,
okay.
and Brian's gonna be sharing the screen. Hope you can see it.
So I'll just formally call the meeting to order, and we did have an agenda. We're gonna skip the first agenda item of the rules of procedure and just dive right into our training with Brian from the Central Vermont Regional Planning Commission. So Stephanie is a member of the DRB, you can see her on the screen. And then Scott, Brian, Phil and I are all DRB members here in Calais.
So Stephanie's from East Montpelier.
She's very Calais also.
Oh,
Yes, so we're all Calais folks,
okay.
and we'll,
Escape button on my keyboard just so that. Okay.
so we'll turn it over to Brian. Thank you very much for coming on these mud roads.
Yeah.
And season roads to
Well,
tell us all about maps.
it's a topic near and dear to my heart. So thanks for having me out. I'm Brian Boyd. I'm the senior planner and program manager at the Central Vermont Regional Planning Commission. In my past life, I was a research professor at UVM, and the only class I taught was GIS. So again, this is a topic that's pretty near and dear to my heart. I've been working with GIS for 30 plus years at this point. So it was really hard to not put on my professor hat and go into deep background, but I would encourage folks to interrupt me whenever and ask questions as I'm talking about the options we have here. And actually, before I dive in, I might just turn it around on you all a little bit. I understand you just got the Axis GIS license, and I can show just a couple of things with that. I haven't played with it much, but it's a relatively standardized product that they sell to other municipalities as well.
I think that's mostly for our listers.
Yeah.
They're the ones that ask for it, and they're probably the ones that use it the most.
Sure, yeah, that makes sense. But I am curious, other than, getting a tour of the interactive map possibilities here, do you all have specific applications in mind? Like, how do you want to use, well, hopefully, teaching today, like, how do you plan to use that in your work?
Well, I can tell you my thought, which stems from one application we had, and the former DRB chair, I was asking him, I was brand new in my role, still feel brand new, like, how would I know something? I can't even remember the question. He said, well, go to this interactive map viewer and look at, you could see, he started to tell me, you could see where the wetlands are in that
Okay.
area. Or you could look at the slope, and it seemed to me like sometimes applicants send us information that is incomplete or begs questions in our mind, and we could look at a map or inform an applicant, here's a tool that might help you
Sure.
answer our questions. But that, I don't know enough about the tool to be more informed than that,
Okay.
other than it seemed like this is a resource that could be helpful to us.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm at.
And until recently, the natural resources map was what came up. We connected to CVRPC, and we were sort of used to zooming in on Calais and clicking on different layers.
And that map is no longer available, or?
And it must be around, yeah.
So, sorry, let me just step back for a second. I've been in this role for about 2 years and didn't really have a lot of overlap in terms of the GIS work with the previous person, so, to my knowledge, I haven't deleted any of the online maps, but there's a possibility that I deleted something that you guys counted on before, and I wanna know that, because I wanna fix it for you, but,
I don't think it's a question of that, it's a link on our webpage.
okay,
So we go to, on our webpage, we go to, let's see, where was I there? Land records and then Calais maps. And and brings up,
And Scott, when you use that map, those maps in the past, has that been specific to being a DRB member or in your other roles or cabinets?
it's available to anybody,
Yeah,
and I use it all for often.
Yeah.
To look up parcels or,
Okay.
look at my own property where there are important areas. And I think we used it in the Connor hearing,
okay.
yeah.
so you've
That was
used,
the A&R.
you used the maps for actual hearings?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm new at this, so whatever they say I need it for.
Well, you're not leaving until you like it, how's
Yeah,
that, buddy?
I'm actually pretty practiced at computer like GIS, so.
Okay.
This will be interesting.
Yeah, cool, all right. Stephanie, any thoughts from you, or do you just want me to dive in?
What did you ask?
Oh, just, any thoughts from you on what you were trying to get out of tonight, so I could make sure to include examples of, ways that you might want to use this?
Well, that's okay because I'm on the Conservation Commission and we've dealt with this a lot, but I'm just interested to hear what, what additional information you might provide. So,
Okay.
that's good. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so really, there are, as you'll see, many different applications. I'm not gonna talk about all the applications because there are just too many to discuss. But at the center of all of those applications is the state of Vermont's data warehouse. And the Vermont Center for Geographic Information, which is a division of the Agency of Digital Services, I think they've bounced around over the years, but within the last few years, been placed under the division of the Agency of Digital Services. And they're the organization that oversees the procurement and the storage and the distribution of Vermont's publicly accessible data sets. They also run 3 sort of special programs, they're statewide. They maintain, they archive the parcel data for the entire state. You all have a private contractor that does your parcel updates, and I believe she just completed updates in January of this year. I sit on a subcommittee that helps lead the state's imagery program. So last year, we were able to collect statewide aerial photography at pretty high resolution. And then the third piece is LiDAR. And we also were able to get, I don't think we got 100% coverage, but definitely in the 90s, LiDAR coverage. So that's light intensity detection and ranging is what that stands for. It's essentially a radar of sorts, and it's used to measure topography. One quick side story about LiDAR, way back in the mid-90s, I was working on a project on the West Coast with NOAA and some other folks, and NOAA was sort of first getting into flying LiDAR, and we were trying to coordinate when they should come out, and they weren't always super responsive, and they call us on a Monday, oh, we collected this great data of this area of the beach that I was working. And we said, you mean this past weekend? And they said, yeah, well, that's gonna be interesting. It was opening day for clamming season, and people on the beaches drive their cars and trucks out there. So the LiDAR actually captured all the vehicles, and then people hunched over digging clams out of the sand. So that data was pretty mediocre, to say the least. So, you know, I've worked in a few different states with GIS, and we're extremely fortunate in Vermont with the data resources that we have. And sometimes it also is nice to be a small state because it makes it possible to collect, things like imagery and LiDAR over the entire state in a single season, which gives us a better picture of, just the, you know, the conditions on the ground and helps in a lot of different ways. So VCGI, as I mentioned, they're sort of the data warehouser, and they store that data in what's known as the Vermont Open Geodata Portal. And when you go to the data portal, they have the data broken up thematically. You can also search. I will say that they're working to improve their search functionality. It's not Google. It's definitely not AI powered. So it might take a little hunting if you're looking for a specific data set. One other note, these green text blocks here are hyperlinks, so they'll take you to the web pages that you see. Okay, so this was one of the sites that Willa had referenced, and what I found most interesting about this is that I didn't really know about this interactive map. Because I tend to use, if I'm using one of the online tools, the ANR Natural Resources Atlas. Now, just really quickly here, look at the images that you see, and you'll basically start to see some theme. They basically all look the same. So that's the wetlands map. This is the flood ready tools map. Parcel viewer looks a little bit different, but all these first four, I think it was, that I'm showing, they all look the same. All of the map viewers that I'm showing you rely on the data that's coming out of the Vermont Open Geodata Portal. So that is basically doing these remote queries. I can talk more technical if you want, but basically this is the store, and each one of these interactive map viewers goes out to the store and grabs a data set as it's needed. So again, here's the interactive map viewer. As I mentioned,
So I named that because that's what somebody pointed me to, but if you think, like, I mean, I guess I'm interested, if these different map viewers are all going to the same data source, really what we should know or learn about, I'm guessing, is which viewer is the most useful for a
Sure.
DRB, and maybe it's a different one than interactive map viewer. So I guess.
well, they're all interactive, which is why I think it's
Right.
interesting that this one's called the interactive map viewer.
Yeah.
Every single one of them, you can zoom in, you can pan, you can turn
Yeah.
data on and off. So they're all interactive.
Yeah.
So one big difference between that I've noted between the interactive map viewer and the ANR Natural Resources Atlas, and at this point, I'm just going to switch over to the websites. Is that with the ANR Atlas, Natural Resources Atlas, there's this drop down, and these are, oh, is that not showing? Try that again. So with the Natural Resources Atlas, you have this option to click on the drop down up on the top left there, and it's the data is sort of sorted by theme, but also kind of by application of the data. So for example, we could look at the rivers program. Maybe we're interested in a parcel that's close to a stream. We want to see where the river corridor is. We want to see where the fluvial erosion hazard zone is, and so on. So what that does when I select one of these items from the dropdown is it filters the data so that only the data relevant to the rivers program is what's displayed. Now I can do a search on the town. And shows me that it found something there where that little red dot is, and if I click the arrow next to that spot, it's gonna zoom me right into the town. And you'll notice that there's a bunch of different data that's turned on. And if we come back over to the layers list, we see that these are either groups of data or just individual data sets. And we can expand those. Everywhere there's a plus sign, that means there's something underneath it that you can expand. And if you uncheck anything, and that's probably not a good one because it's not, there's not a whole lot going on there. Let me find. I mean, this is the problem with all these. As I mentioned, there's a lot of data, and that's why I prefer to use this filtered approach. So that it makes it a little bit easier to see what you're looking at. Let me zoom in a little bit here as well. And
Interesting, these two sites seem to use the same application,
yeah,
it's just with a different scale.
yeah, it's pretty much, so, this is, I think this might be built off of, something called GeoCortex. And it's basically like the default app, and then you just add
Right.
the data that you want to, basically add the queries to it that you want to pull the data. So here's the river corridors, that's what's shown here in the light yellow. And I can turn that data off just by unchecking it. Click the check mark, that turns it back on, and it appears on the screen. Now, I can also click in the window, and it's a little bit hard for us in the room to see, but I can tell you right up here that this returned six results. So basically, when I clicked in here, it found 6 different things. It found a parcel that's highlighted here in blue. It found a watershed layer, so we're in the Kingsbury Branch sub-watershed in this part of town. This is a stream geomorphic assessment, that I'm not seeing show up on the screen. Few of those, and then the last one here is the river corridor. And so what pops up is the description of this particular feature. So for any of those, if I go back to the parcel, it's gonna tell me the span and the category. Again, this is all grand list related stuff, the value, the acreage, whether or not it's in current use. I can look at additional details over here in the left pane, and it's gonna tell me it's in Calais. It's gonna have a bunch of blank fields, give me the mailing address, all of the grand list attribution. So that's everything that you see in here. So, let's go back to the layers here. And, you know, I use the Natural Resources Atlas when I want to look at a lot of different things at one time. And you can use the themes, so, you know, maybe you want to look at, there's one about roads in here that I'm not currently seeing. Oh, municipal road thing. So you can look at the different themes and decide, oh, I wanna find the, you know, a certain subset of that data, and then you can just type in the filter, make sure that data set's toggled on, clear your filter, go to another one, make sure that data set's toggled on, and then you're looking at only the data that you want. But again, you have access to essentially this entire catalog of data that we see from the OpenGeo data portal.
It's mind-boggling, because I was just listening, looking at, that, so we really need to hear about how to focus in on.
It can be pretty overwhelming. I don't disagree. So let me,
How did you bring up that box that, of explanation? Was that-
just by clicking in the screen. So, Oops, this
Oh,
is-
yeah, okay, I see, on the
Layers.
layer.
Yeah, and so right now I'm looking at a road segment here. And, this tells me that, Pekin Brook Road partially meets the municipal roads general permit standard for, that segment.
Yeah.
And if I turned on other data, because right now I don't have much turned on, but I could turn on the water quality monitoring, I could, just keep turning things on until something else shows up, basically. And then when I click in the screen, it's still just gonna show me one. It's not included. But however many data layers are turned on and that you click on, features that you click on in those, data layers, that's how many things will come up. And then you can always, let me go back to the first one that we're looking at, which was the rivers.
So Brian, let's say, because we would probably start by knowing a parcel. So if we went into that parcel and then turned am I correct in thinking when you first open up the map atlas, all the data is?
It's not all turned on, it's
Okay.
just the, I think what they call the popular
Oh, okay,
data sets are turned on, but that's still
still
a lot. So we're
So
at,
maybe turn everything off and then choose the ones you want.
yeah, we're at, what's this, Kent?
We're probably most interested in forest management blocks and connectivity and, big forest blocks.
Okay, all right, so we'll look at the natural resources, theme here in a minute, but I just typed in, I think this 1662 is where we are currently, is that right? The address?
It looks like it on that picture.
I use Google Maps to get here,
Yes,
so.
that's definitely.
Okay,
Road there.
yeah, so here we are, so you receive a permit application. It's gonna have the address, or the span number, you could use either. Span might be better for you, but it might be harder for people to find. People sometimes represent their addresses in
Okay.
ways that are not
Yeah.
conducive to matching with the E911 data, I guess would be the nicest way to say that, so.
Yeah.
And there's postal address.
And yes,
In different towns.
Right.
exactly, yeah, so that can get confusing in a hurry, but, so, in any case, you locate the parcel, if you have a good address, it'll take you right there, and then this shows us that, that this yellow color here, this is the river corridor, just click on that. You
So
see-
the town hall is right in the river corridor.
Yes,
Yep.
yeah, so I just clicked in here, 10 different, return records came up, so this parcel that's next to us, just a little further down the road. The parcel where we are, so land and town hall, if we click that, Scott, and I don't know if you were talking about this box or
Yeah, that,
for some of the data, there is a view additional details option, and if I click that, it'll take me over to the additional details just for that current feature that it was displaying the attribution for.
I see, yeah.
And so you can just keep scrolling through, there's the stream, watershed again, the different reaches for some of the stream geomorphic work that's been done. But as you cycle through a theme like this and sort of poke around at the data, you might say like, okay, it's not that I don't care which watershed we're in, but it's just not really relevant to my zoning decision. So I'm gonna turn the watershed
Yeah.
data off. So if we go back to the layers, I should be able to find something called WBID watersheds. So I'm gonna turn that off. And if I so now if I click essentially in the same place, only 9 things come up. I know it's hard for you all in the room to see, but this number right here, well, this says 1 of 9.
Okay.
When I had the watershed data set turned on, it was 1 of 10.
Mhm.
So, the watershed's never gonna be important. The parcel, sure, that's important. Maybe some of this other stuff, not so much. So really, for you, it's the other factors that you wanna take into account related to the application at hand. So let's take a look at the, so let's just there and let's go to the BioFinder. Okay, so,
Wait, how'd you do that?
oh, sorry. From the menu in the top left corner, so right under where it says layers, there's this drop-down menu, and that allows you to access the different themes with the data. And one of those is BioFinder, it's like the
Yep, got it.
fifth or sixth one down.
Yes,
And so that's just gonna open up the BioFinder related data sets, and then we could look for our forest blocks, so, I'm just doing on national forests, so that's our interior forest blocks, for example. So now a little bit. And so, again, if we click, we'll just click in the parcel this time. 3 different data layers are identified, the parcel, landscape priority, so, interior, so this is a surface water priority, this little, green blob that we see right here. And it's a highest priority, for surface water over here, as well. One thing I haven't showed yet, but before I get to that, let me show you one thing that's kind of frustrating. This box you can't move, so even if it's,
Okay,
oh,
right.
they did fix that, so sometimes you have to move your area of interest out of the way of this box. I'm trying to remember, one of the other viewers, it might be the parcel viewer, where if you then move you pan your display, the box closes, so it's a real pain in the neck. But one other thing I didn't show was, for some of these, you'll see just a single color next to the layer, so forest targets, and it's just this green. For others, there's something that looks like a few lines, just lines drawn with symbols next to it. If you expand that, it will tell you, you know, that this sort of light purple are the priority interior forest blocks, and the dark purple are the highest priority. So you can still access that information by clicking in the map for sure, but, you know, suppose you're zoomed out quite a bit and you're looking at, you know, maybe the town as a whole, and it'll take a second for the data to draw here. But now you can say, okay, all of our highest priority forest blocks are up here in the northwest corner of town. Southwest corner, we got some priority, and you know, kind of just off to the east there, we have some priority as well. So that's when just looking at the legend visually and interpreting the data will be really helpful.
And would you mind, I just went to the atlas, because I thought maybe I might do what Scott's doing.
Sure.
Trying to do this as you do it.
Mhm.
Can you give me the address of, the town hall again?
Oh, yeah, I will, it's 1662
62.
Kent Hill Road. Any questions? Nothing?
No, that's knowing the layers on this one, because I have played around with a couple of the different ones, that's definitely handy.
To be able to filter.
Yeah, oh, yeah, totally, because that whole faceting search on the left is, they're just maddening to like flip around.
Yeah, and if you know, if you go back to the all layers, I mean, you're just, oops, well, there's. But yeah, it's just, you're just scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, so,
And so then I went to layers.
yep, and then look, up in the top left there, and you'll see a drop down
Yeah.
menu.
Okay, that's where you turn.
And right now, we're looking on the screen at the BioFinder
Okay.
option.
Yeah.
What's the difference in, what is priority?
Means it's good but not great. And highest priority, you should be avoiding, development impacts to the extent that you
Okay.
can. So you're really wanting, development in either the priority or the highest priority areas is, there's a lot of potential for fragmenting the landscape. And so for our species that like to be able to roam over larger distances, like having to cross
Continuous forest.
even a Kent Hill Road is sometimes more than they want to deal with. So,
Mhm.
yeah, so we're looking for continuous large scale forest blocks.
And so that would directly affect us, right? Will, if someone were looking to develop in a purple area, we would have to consider that.
Yeah, well, I mean, we'd have to read what our regulations say about
Sure.
that.
Yeah, hopefully your regulations would discourage,
Right.
mile-long driveways into the middle of a large forest block. And, it's not that there's no impact, but encouraging that development closer to the edge instead of in the middle, would reduce the impact in a case like that.
Sure, okay.
I mean, you're still chipping away at the edge, but also.
Yeah, I mean,
Also,
I'm looking, someone
people
just
need to
built
be
a
able to-
house out in the purple this last year, but it was right on the road that it pre-existed.
Yeah. So let me show one more thing here, that I think is pretty nice about this as well. Maybe you could do it in the interactive map, but, I like this. So if you want to, this would be another thing that you could encourage your applicants to do if there are some questions about, what you're looking at. So let me go back to our, so you can click on the tools button in the upper right corner. It says open toolbar. And then you've got a bunch of options across the top. And if you use the map tools, so the one all the way on the left, you have a couple of options. One is if you're you want a graphic for a report, you can click on export and then choose the format that you want. So suppose you just want an image that you want to be able to paste into a document. So I'm going to select a JPEG format and click create image. And so this is processing on the ANR server side. And now I click on view image. This is what we were just looking at.
As a snapshot.
As a snapshot, but without all the other
Yeah.
stuff on there.
Uh-huh.
So that's pretty cool for just generating an image for a report. You can also print, and this will give you the option to essentially print a file. So you can create a PDF from this. And you can set the size, so there's a few different options there. You can set the resolution, you can customize the title, you can create some notes. And then you click print. And again, it's preparing the file over on the ANR server side. And I click open file. And now I've got a map, and any of the data that's displayed, actually any of the data that's turned on is included in a legend over here. So I know that this lime green road segment here fully meets the MRGP outlet scoring. And that this blue blob here is a water body. So you can have an applicant zoom into their parcel
Right.
and say, display the wetlands data, the river corridor data, and the MRGP data, for example, and have them submit that to you. And, once you decide on the layers that you would want to see on a map submission, it would be good practice to essentially identify those names and then say, go to the ANR Atlas, filter by this layer, and this layer, turn those on, zoom to your property and click print. Because anybody can generate a
Yeah.
map to support their case. And for folks that are, more savvy, maybe they'll include some other data to further bolster their case, for something like this.
And if you put that into, if you had the right version of Adobe, you could go in and draw like on it what you were planning to do, like you could.
You could, yeah, definitely. You can also do some drawing on the natural resources atlas.
Okay.
So let me try that. I've actually never tried that, but you're right. So I'm just gonna do a freehand shape. Oops.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's where we're gonna create our artificial wetlands. And we're just gonna leave everything else the same. And quick print. And file. There you go.
And it's food.
So, if somebody's developing land for the first time, they could put prior to an engineering drawing, perhaps have a general area of impact or development footprint. Could easily have them do something like that.
Yeah.
Is there an easy way to get it to, print to a PDF, exactly what you're seeing on the screen? I've sometimes been sort of frustrated with, I get something all set up on the screen and say print, and then it prints something different.
I think it's this lock print preview with map toggle option that will get you closer.
Yeah,
I
that sounds right, yeah.
don't know that there's any way to constrain it more than that.
No.
So, and sometimes it's going to change, based on the layout that you choose. So if I choose this, 11:17 portrait versus 11:17 landscape,
Sure.
probably the size of the map pane itself is gonna change, which means it's gonna show a bit, it's gonna scale it to keep it as close as possible, but it's gonna also wanna fill up the whole box, if that makes sense. So there's not any blank space anywhere.
Yeah, sometimes it, if I get what I wanna see on the screen, and then go to print it, and I get just sort of the middle, the center of what I was looking at on the screen.
Yeah, I've seen that happen, but I think if you try that at that lock map,
That sounds just right.
that should solve that
That sounds
problem.
very good, yeah.
Okay, any other questions about this? I wanted to show a couple other.
Just where where is the data sets defined, like if I want to figure out what the priority was on the first website you showed us?
Okay, so,
Yeah,
so let's come back. Oops, where are we here? Here, and go back to my layers and. So let me, the roads data is always a good one that can be confusing. So if I do a search for roads, it's gonna give me a bunch of different options. If you were to actually look at the layer name in the atlas and type that instead of, I'm just being a little bit lazy, you
Sure.
would be able to find the specific data set you're looking at, but this AOT data set of Vermont Road Centerline. So if I click on that, at this point now, it's gonna take me to something that looks like an interactive map, and for all intents and purposes, it is. I can zoom in and it's gonna show me, the roads just in this area.
Yep.
And I can even click on those roads and get some information. So this is Darling Road and somewhere, and it's gonna give me all the road attribution.
Mhm.
But you can also click on this view full details. And that takes you to essentially a document
Mhm.
with other ways to access the data. But what you want is, well, in this case, you want the user guide. Most of the time, you're gonna want, well, 99% of the time, there's not gonna be a user guide. There's just gonna be metadata.
Mhm.
The metadata will give you a definition of what the data is and in some cases is not. And then it will talk about the history of this. So mean, the original roads data set was built off a combination of paper and RC Kodak RF 5000 scale ortho photos, originally digitized in 1992. So I'll give you like the history of the data set. But your question, and again, for this particular data set, if you select the user guide, and
Oh, right.
scroll through
Yeah.
some areas,
Catalog.
attributes with default values and also the definition. So it would tell you what those things are. Let me show one other example where I can actually show you how it would look if you were doing it. So the E911 data. E911 data is super useful. I'll show that in another map viewer here in a second. But the E911 e-sites, which are somewhere. So this data set here, the site locations, and also the E911 data includes driveways and trails as well, so those data sets are also useful. But if I click on the view full details, which is this one, it'll take me back to a page that looks just like the other page, much shorter description, but if I link to the metadata, and this is a cleaner look, which is why I should have just started with this example, but this entity and attribute information. So everything that we looked at in those pop-up boxes, those are all what's known as attributes. So sometimes data is really complex and you have to use a coding scheme, and this entity and attribute information is essentially your translation. So here are all the different attributes with that E911 data, so PD, prefix direction, PT, prefix type, and then if you scroll down, eventually we'll get to the interesting part of the data set, and that's the site type. And for each one of the points in the E911 data set, they are assigned a site type. So it's a fish farm or fish hatchery, it's a border patrol outpost, it's a racetrack, it's a gas station, it's a brewery, and on down the list. There are probably 150 or so different options.
Cool.
But this is where you would find the value, and typically a better definition is expected here, but for the most part, these are self-explanatory.
Sure, yeah.
Some of them can get a little confusing, but again, the entity and attribute information for any of the spatial data sets that you see is where you would go to do that sort of translation from what is it that this code is saying to what does that code actually mean.
Who collects this? Is the police department?
No, this is submitted by, every town has an E911 coordinator, and so if someone does a parcel subdivision and they keep their house on one parcel and their 10-acre lot that was next to them is a new parcel, then they sell that, someone decides to build a house there. I believe it's sort of around the permitting time, and maybe it's after the driveway has been built, but the house number, the street number is assigned based on the distance of the driveway from the end of the road segment. So those numbers roughly translate that way, and so the number is then assigned at that time, and it's based on that distance so that they're unique. You can't have two 1662
Sure.
Hill roads. You can only have two waterfalls that are named the same thing. You can't have two street addresses with the same address.
We just called the 911 coordinator and her email is on the website.
Yep.
And she comes around and assigns something.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so every town has a person that fills that role.
Okay.
Yep.
Well,
How did you get to E911 off the
From there?
OMG data program?
Yeah, so I just used the
Search?
search at the top there. So go back to that.
Oh, I see, and you just typed E9.
I typed in E911 and started typing
Oh, I
e-site.
see. Hydrants, okay.
Yeah, and it'll give you
Whatever
all
you asked.
the options. Yep.
Yeah. I didn't know E911 had trails too, I just thought it was.
Yeah, it's got trails for rescue purposes, it's got driveways, there's a handful of different really
Yeah.
useful. The trails data is probably the mean, they're all good quality, but the trails data is probably the least good of the lot for a number of different reasons. But, you know, among the top reasons are because multiple different people maintain trail data throughout the state. And sometimes it's town by town. And, they, you know, because there's so many people maintaining trail data, not everyone knows that, like you said, I didn't know everyone had trail data. And so if you're maintaining trail data for your town forest, but you don't know that there's an E911 trails data set, you're not likely to forward that information onto the E911 crew. Okay, let me just show two other things that are hiding here. So you mentioned wetlands before. So this is the Agency of Natural Resources Wetlands Inventory Map. I can drop this in the chat if you want.
How did you bring that up?
I just dropped a link in the chat, so if you look at the, oh wait, but your computer's not on. You can just
I
type,
just searched.
you can just do wetlands map, Vermont wetlands,
Yeah.
interactive wetlands map, and that'll work for you. So, again, basically looks like the natural resources atlas that we were just checking out. We can go into our layers, and it's essentially a subset of all of the layers that were in the natural resources atlas. But where I think this would become really useful is, let's go back to everybody's favorite address. Oops, no, road. And we'll zoom right into our location here. And I can go back to my layers and see that we've got all kinds of stuff turned on, but maybe I'm just gonna turn off the fish and wildlife and what the base map is. Yeah, so we'll leave that on there and can zoom in a little bit more. We can expand any of these to see sort of what else is underneath. Again, there's just kind of a lot, and I just wanted us to look at wetlands. Wetlands all left. So no matter how long you play around with this, you always still make it look like amateur hour because there are so many different data layers that you want to talk about. But so here we are, and we can, let's click in our parcel again and see what we've got going. So, you know, that's the parcel. So we've got, a wetland from the, Vermont Significant Wetlands Inventory. If we open that up, we can look at the colors there and see, just visually, we can click on the view additional details. It's a class 2 wetland. It was adopted in 1990, edited, last year, or 2 years ago, just about at this point. And so we can see, you know, once again, if someone was interested in developing some part of their property, I'm pretty sure you can do the same, export or print or draw, so all that same functionality that we just looked at on the natural resources atlas, but this is just wetlands and parcels for the most part. So maybe that makes everybody's life just a little bit easier if they're only looking at that. Questions about this?
This is covers significant wetlands. I just wanted to state it, just because my property doesn't show any wetlands, yet it is one of them.
Yeah, so this covers both the significant wetland inventory as well as the advisory layer.
Okay.
So the VSWI is the regulatory layer.
Yeah.
The advisory layer doesn't carry that same sort of regulatory authority, but if you were to propose development in an area where there was a wetland shown in the advisory layer, then it would be good practice to ask for a formal wetland delineation on the property before moving forward with the permitting. So the VSWI, the Vermont Significant Wetlands Inventory, are the jurisdictional wetlands.
Yeah.
And the advisory layer is just sort of like, some work has been done there by someone at some point, and they think there was a wetland present, but they didn't actually go out onto the ground and do the delineation that's required to make
Sure.
it jurisdictional. But I mean, I think, again, depending on the purpose, if you wanna look at a bunch of stuff, to me, A and R atlas is the way to go.
Mhm.
If what your primary concern is something like wetlands, there's no reason not to just simplify everybody's life, go over the wetlands inventory map.
Yeah.
It's nice that that functionality with the creating the map layouts and exporting the maps and being able to draw on there and add notes and things like that. Like, it's nice that the functionality is the same between the two map viewers, because it's just one less thing to learn.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Shoreland is another area that we're concerned with,
What's that?
shoreland
Shorelands?
area districts, and our town is in the middle of, adopting a plan with, quite changed shoreline regulations.
Okay.
I don't know, would that appear anywhere after we?
Yeah,
We
so,
haven't adopted it yet,
so
hasn't been approved, but,
we go back to the natural resources atlas. I believe there's a shorelands. Oh, yeah, lake shorelands. There's a lake shorelands theme, and you can see. Looks like we've got some, that's a wetland and a wetland, oh, we're right in the same place as before, so. And what is the, oh yeah, Lake and Pond, oh yeah, Shoreline Protection Act. So we can see here. On permits, turn off the weapons. And. So it looks like you've got something in place, the
Yeah.
lakeside and upland, so it shows that there's something there, and then if I click on this, I'm not sure if it'll take me deep enough to see the regulations. It just tells me it's an upland shoreline zone, 250 foot, buffer, and that it's on Curtis Pond.
Yeah. And we just extended that to 400 feet.
So once that happens,
Yeah, who's gonna put it in there?
well, we should talk about that. That's something we can do, CDRPC can do, for sure. So,
That
Yeah,
doesn't happen automatically.
no, there's not. Just because the town adopts new zoning regulations doesn't mean that, anything changes in any of the interactive maps. The only way it changes is if the town submits new data or, and, you know, more likely, the consultant or the regional planning commission submits data. So I would be interested in, taking a look at the draft language.
Uh-huh.
And, you know, if you're changing your zoning, it's likely there are other
It's pretty complicated.
spatial changes, like, are you changing, other district boundaries as well? Cause this is an overlay, right? You treat the shoreline as an overlay, district?
I think here you do
I only
something.
remember seeing Shoreland,
We're
and they did enact it, it's just not legally binding yet.
yeah,
So it's like because our town plan is late, it's not legally binding, but
Okay.
it's been enacted.
Oh, it's already been adopted,
But
okay,
you can't enforce it yet.
gotcha. Okay, so, yeah, in that case, I'll take a look at the final language and I can create the new buffers for the lakes. And then work with somebody at A&R to get that data updated.
Oh, it is like magic then.
Kinda.
I am a musician. Yeah.
All right, let's see if I have,
Hmm.
oh, here's another one, really cool. But again, it's just a subset of what you see on the A&R Atlas. This is the flood ready Vermont. And, you know, we can scroll in, And we can look at things like, the ERAF scores, the Emergency Relief and something fund. Basically how much the state contributes, to post-disaster recovery. And we can see, right now, Calais is in that 12.5%. So FEMA will cover 75%, post-disaster, and the municipality picks up the other 25%. And if, and right now, because you've got 4 mitigation activities, the state would pick up half of that 25% cost share. So interesting to be able to just check on town status, stuff like that, but also, you can look at, so like how current your flood maps are. So you've got the digital flood insurance rate map. So it's the most current data that we have for that. New data is forthcoming, but again, when that comes out, who really knows? So there's just some interesting things that you can look at related to flood resilience
That is very cool.
on this particular one. Maybe not quite as applicable to zoning decisions. I mean, you can certainly see the flood hazard areas and the river corridors on the natural resources atlas as well.
So I got to the flood ready tools map and got Calais. Where do you see all the filters and layers on this?
So
Oh, I just found
this
it.
one, you can type in to search for data, but it doesn't have that same drop down like the atlas, because essentially this is just a subset of the atlas. This would be the flood ready Vermont subset of the atlas. And so it only has those data sets that are part of that theme. So you can, if you scroll down, you can see turn this off. You can see the ANR atlas layers. And you can go to the rivers program and you should be able to see, yeah, flood hazard areas. So now we can see the various flood hazard areas, and I can expand my legend for the DFIRM, that's digital flood insurance rate map, flood hazard area. And we can see that, you know, along Peak and Brook here, this is a 1% annual chance. So basically the delineation of the 100-year flood zone. So you could, I believe there's parcels, yeah, there are parcels on here as well. You probably just have to be zoomed in far enough to be able to see them. So I'm not turning on. So we can turn on the parcel data and you could say, oh, somebody wants to develop this field right here. Well, it's outside of the 100-year flood zone, probably in a decent place. So I mean, that would be really the best way to make use of this, unless you want to go back to the natural resources atlas and just try to subset filter the data so that you just get the flood related stuff.
The 100-year flood data, what is the 100 years they're looking at?
It just means that there's a 1% chance of a flood on that stream in a given year.
Based on historical
Based on
data,
historic data, yep.
but not necessarily based on the reality
No.
of climate
We
change.
had 2 in the last 3 years. So.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate that in the news, they refer to them as 100-year floods, because that implies that if it happened once, it's not gonna happen again in my lifetime, but it's really a 1% probability of a flood event occurring, which is, if everything played out the way that it should, based on that, then, it would be closer to the interpretation of, oh, it happened last year, it's not gonna happen for another 100 years. It doesn't unfortunately work that way. There are limitations to this data. I mean, this data at this point is pretty out of date. It doesn't take into account, like, it's not like it gets updated, so as someone clear cuts, up at the top of, a watershed, or someone puts in, a berm somewhere along the stream, so that their property's not impacted, and just pushing the other water down faster, it's not gonna reflect that. One of the reasons that we don't have the new data yet that was promised almost 2 years ago at this point is because we've had back-to-back pretty massive floods, and depending on where you are in the state, between 100-year and 500-year flood events. FEMA was convinced to incorporate the 2023 flood data into the new mapping effort, which is not their typical method of operation. So it's, on the one hand, again, fun to complain about the feds being problematic. On the other hand, they actually listen, and the reason that the data is delayed at this point is because they're incorporating more information, which should give us better floodplain delineations.
That was very important when we were rebuilding the town hall.
Right.
And they fiddled around, but eventually did give us the data that we needed. So the town hall is now 4 feet higher and 4 feet more in that direction.
Okay.
Than it had been before.
Okay, nice. So I won't go through this one, but I will just note, and again, it's on the slide deck as well, but there's an E911 viewer, so, if we just really quickly zoom into town, so many Calais options. Well, that's gonna be road, but we're just gonna zoom right into what this looks like in this part of town here, and this is impossible to see even just looking on my screen, and when you zoom in, the symbols scale, so they get smaller, which is
Oh,
kind of frustrating, but, you can see from, and here's our eSites data, and that's what we're looking at here. If I expand that list, there's just an unmanageable number of different, categories here. So, I can click on that, I can, to look at the actual attribute table, so you can look at multiple records at once, but that's not necessarily crucial here, but again, you can, so these are your driveways, little hash marks, and then all the different icons translate to something over here. But just like all the other ones, you can click on that. For some reason, it looks like it's trying to pull Google Street Map imagery, and apparently Google's afraid to drive down North Calais Road. I can't imagine why. But for, other parts of the state, like the bigger cities, they do have street map views of the individual structures, which can also be kind of nice. So you can look at, if you're trying to look at maybe a density related question, somebody wants to build a couple houses, you want to look at density, you could look at sort of the number of these little purple blobs that you see within some area, for example, and that would give you a better indication of what's going on in that location. And this data is updated monthly, the E911 data. So particularly for the addresses and the roads data, it's a really high quality and reliable data set for looking at what's going on. I mean,
say you found or have a map that you're looking at a map and you want to print it. Is there a way to get, print out enough information so somebody could reproduce what you've done? Like a footnote or a reference? Or so you could remember how you got there?
yeah, I mean, the best way would be to provide them with the E911 address, the official registered address of the location, and that would get them back there. I don't know if you can set the scale. Oh, yeah, you can, and then you can set the map scale. So if you, let's go back to our Search current address. Oh, you can calculate a new address if you are so inclined. That's probably what your E911 coordinator does. Drawing blank on where to find. Oh, right there. So I can search on a location and have it take me to that location. And then say, what you had here wasn't quite enough for what you wanted. You needed to zoom out a little bit. You could click on the map scale, so you could tell, someone, oh, search on this address, and then set the map scale to 1 to.
More or less.
It sort of constrains the zoom levels. I guess I can't just type in whatever I want, but
That's close.
you could tell them which one of the scales that you want to display the map at, and that's about as close as you're gonna get. There are other, I have seen other interactive maps that, essentially the URL, the website address changes as you move around and configure the data.
Yeah.
And for something like that, you can just provide the person with the URL and they can click on it and it'll open exactly like you're looking at it.
Yeah.
The USGS, hopefully this still exists, but the USGS national map is sort of the equivalent to our ANR Atlas. And that has all the federal level data. So the National Land Cover data set, the original home site for the watershed boundaries, all the stream data, any of the national scale topographic data, all that stuff. And you can do essentially all the same work that you can do with a natural resource. Using the national map, but just with national scale data instead of state scale data.
Which is more likely to be more accurate.
For some things, yeah, and some of the data that's included in the interactive maps that we've looked at, like the watershed boundaries data set that came before, that's coming directly from the national map. That's not work that was reproduced in the state of Vermont. So the bulk of the data is collected at the state level, but there are other data streams that work their way in there. And then the last thing I want to show you, just really quickly again, because I only played around with this for a short amount of time today, but I did discover something that you might find interesting, and hopefully I can remember how I did that. But if I click on the parcel, if I click on a parcel,
Where are you in now, Brian?
this is the Axis GIS. So this is the software that or the interactive map that you just licensed here. But so here's the parcel, here's our parcel. Again, all the grand list information, this is all the same information we saw on the ANR Atlas earlier. But one thing that I think is pretty cool that you could do that might be relevant to your work is there's this butters button. And I can click that and it's gonna show me every parcel, in this case within 100 feet. It does appear you can change it. So we could look for all the abutters within 250 feet, and then you can actually see who they are. So if you had to send out a notice to abutters,
The zoning administrator would find that very useful.
this would be the way to do it, because
That is how he does it.
yeah, the parcel data set, the interactive parcel viewer, which I didn't show you, but is another site we could look at. But again, once you've seen a few, you've seen enough to actually be able to break things on your own.
Yeah.
None of the other sites, at least not that I noticed, had this easy functionality. So I just, was looking at things we could do related to our town parcel here, and scrolled those various buttons and saw that there was something that can identify the abutters, and thought that might be something to make somebody's life a little bit easier.
Yeah. Yes, the applicant has to list all the butters.
Yeah. Well, and then maybe even pointing the applicant to that, because maybe it's somebody new in town that doesn't know, doesn't know much. So, yeah, thanks for indulging. That was quite a bit. I'm happy to answer more questions now, or if you want to play around a little bit and, send me questions via email, be happy to do that, respond, that way as well. Just one other thing really quickly, I'm gonna have to stop sharing and share again. We've got a couple of, well, one event that I want to make you aware of, well, two events, one that we're hosting and one that's being run by the state, but next week at the Yes Tomorrow Design Build School in Waitsfield, we're holding a wastewater workshop to, with the state of Vermont, DEC, person from their, compliance outreach operations and logistics program. She's gonna come talk about aging septics, septic systems, what options you have for prolonging the life of your septic system, and if you're in the unfortunate position of needing a new septic system, some of the newer technologies that are now permittable in the state of Vermont. So realize it's quite a haul from here to Waitsfield, but there is a remote participation option if you're interested. It's not focused on the Mad River Valley, and as I'm from the valley, so I like to be able to make fun of people there. I remind them that we're not so special, that our wastewater moves in a different way than anywhere else in the state. So broadly applicable if you're interested, and like I said, I'll send you this presentation so you have all the information, and if you wouldn't mind promoting that out to your networks, that'd be fantastic, because we'd love to have as many remote participants as are able to join. And the one other announcement, and this is outside of my program area, so I won't be able to answer any questions, but I include Sam Lash's contact info here. She's our energy and climate planner. The state of Vermont is holding a number of essentially listening sessions for updating the 2025 climate action plan. So they're all listed over on the left-hand side there. The closest one to us is the April 28th date in Barrie, but there are a couple of virtual participation opportunities as well. So if you're interested in engaging with the state on the climate action plan, then plenty of opportunities to do so. And you don't have to go to the Barrie one because it's the closest.
And Hardwick is also probably is.
Oh, yeah. You can tell I don't get over this part of the state enough.
I mean, not this time of year, because you can't go up dirt road, you can Hardwick, but normally.
Fair enough.
If we were to post this on Front Porch Forum, is there a URL for these events that we could?
I can get you, certainly get the URL for the wastewater workshop. I'm certain we can get the URL instead of the QR
So
code.
I could paste, I could take a snip of that and post it as a photo and stuff.
Yeah, or you can just open the QR code and that would be the URL.
Then you get the URL.
Okay.
But I will, I'll send you this stuff first thing tomorrow morning, and if you all are willing to
Yeah.
broadcast that, that'd be great. I think the septic one, I mean, they're both important, but I think the septic one, just, knowing the makeup of our towns, a lot of old houses with a lot of old septic systems,
Right,
so mine included.
yeah.
Mine's right in the wetland.
What's that?
Mine's right in the wetland.
Oh, well, that'll be easy to remember.
No, I've got to pump it up the hill.
Oh, jeez.
So Brian, I feel like, oh my God.
Yeah.
How do I, like, it seems until I started using it, because this is all pretty much new to me for Phil and Scott. So we may have some new board members coming on. We can appointment to this recording, I noticed that I think it's the A&R one has a video, like a YouTube
They
video.
do, yeah, it's
Is
about an
that
hour long. It is kind of, but I believe it's for the previous version
Okay,
of the,
okay. Might not have it.
so all that really means is that some of the buttons look different and maybe they're in different places, but the functionality, like when you click on things, the functionality is
Yeah.
still the same. It's just like
Yeah.
when they update Microsoft Word or
Yeah.
something like that, where everything changes, like that. But
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, I think that's helpful. I think, take a recent permit decision
right,
and actually look at the property, just
right,
do that search on the A&R
Yeah.
Atlas or on the wetlands interactive map. And actually just look at the property and sort
Yeah.
of interrogate it as if you were making that decision, not that you had already made the decision.
Right.
And it's sort of like you're testing yourself in a way, like,
Yeah.
hey, am I finding this the same as we thought the
Right.
information was being presented in the hearing?
so maybe even like the town, the one in East Calais that you came to. For
Oh, right.
the waste.
That is what I meant all before, that's right, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
I'm a flatlander, I'm not used to this like North Calais, East Calais,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Calais, like,
Yeah.
when I grew up, it was like, you're in a city or it's unincorporated.
Yeah.
Anyway, yes, so, like that'd be a great one.
Because there was.
Sorry, I didn't think about that, but yeah, stormwater permits,
Yeah.
all kinds of things that,
Yeah.
you could look at in there.
Well, maybe we'll put that in the notes, Scott, I could just say people could do that on their own. I might do that, because I feel starting to get a little, less, but as I say, I don't use mapping in my world, my work, so. it's-
Yeah, and the other thing, I think it was Scott was mentioning before, it's a fun way to look at your own property.
Well, it's a- Yeah,
Because
yeah,
how often do you look at aerial photographs of your property?
Yeah.
You probably know where the deer and moose tromp through your yard,
Yeah.
but like, does the state consider part of it a deer wintering? Are you gonna be lucky enough to see one of the big blobs that denotes a rare, threatened, endangered species
Yeah.
somewhere within there?
Right.
Like, those are also good ways to
Yeah.
experiment, it's just like, think about something that you're interested in and use the map to look at it. And obviously, my bias is showing, again, I really like maps, I always have, but
yeah,
it's, look at places that you know and try to relate what the data is showing and
Yeah.
what you're seeing on the screen to what you know about the place.
that's a-
Because I think that's a really
Yeah.
good way to learn how to
Yeah.
use a tool or tools like this.
But I think there will be like a subset of the data that's kind of always applicable to us in our decisions. So, once you learn that, we can write it down and make it available to people. Like,
Yeah.
here are the things.
Yep.
Right,
Here's our layer
Yeah.
for what we're gonna need to look at.
yeah,
Yeah, and I mean, as you do that, I'd be really interested to hear what you're interested in. So, we're not looking to build a new version of the Natural Resources Atlas, but we also publish interactive maps through the Regional Planning Commission. And if I knew that most of the DRBs were interested in, these 5 data sets,
Yeah.
I could actually build a really simple one that you don't have to filter all the data, but it can still has your parcels, has your E911 data, has your wetlands, your river corridors. What is that list of data that you're
Right.
interested in? Because if you're interested in it, I'm interested in hearing about it.
okay,
Because we can build out tools that make your life easier. I mean, it's never going to fully replace the atlas. I'm not
Yeah.
gonna build the infrastructure where someone can print out their own map. Because what we don't see when that happens is that it actually costs a little bit of money and it's like
Yeah.
fractions of a penny, but when the state hosts that, probably 10,000, 20, I don't know how many maps get made
Yeah.
every year, but that's one. Budget to support that. So that's why I'm saying, like, I can't rebuild all
yeah,
the functionality, but
yeah,
if it's to simplify decision making as you're holding a hearing, like, hey, these are the layers we're interested in, we can do something like that.
okay,
And then it's more a matter of using the various tools in concert with one another.
right,
Sometimes I'm gonna use the A&R Atlas, sometimes I'm just going straight to the wetlands. Sometimes I'm gonna use a combination of all 3.
yeah. You know, it made me, like, that sounds appealing, but it also sounds like a little bit of recreating the wheel. And I say this not having done this and knowing, but I wonder if, like, it could be sort of a cool workshop process to have people who have experience on DRBs, I don't know, say me, come together and sort of take, like, look at these and say, well, the standard is most, like, for most applications, you're gonna want to know these 5, 7 items. So sort of like when you go into the atlas, like, can you just turn all the layers off? And like, you know, sometimes when I'm using a system, I'll go in and turn everything off and then just go to the ones I want, as opposed to
Right.
unclicking everything.
So in the desktop software, you can hold the control button down and click on the check mark and
Right,
everything turns off at
exactly,
once.
that's-
It does not
do that.
appear that it's operating that way. Try the,
Is there a reset button?
I mean, you can reload, but it's still gonna just come on with the default layers, which is their popular layers pack.
Sure.
One of the things that I was experimenting with before and sort of, you know, along the lines of what I'm thinking, if I knew that the bulk of our towns are interested in these 5 to 10 things
Yeah.
for, DRB hearings, was to load those layers up, and the drop-down window would actually be just the list of municipalities, and you select your town, it zooms into the town, it basically grays everything else out, and then you navigate to the address and shows just the data that you asked for and nothing else. And, you know, something like that, it's not difficult to build,
Yeah.
but there's always gonna be the exception to the rule, right? And that's when you're still gonna probably need to go back over to the natural resources atlas to look at some other data.
Right, but it could simplify things and it could
It's a
also,
good start.
Yeah.
for applicants too, because that also seems, like, we've been talking in the DRB about how to prepare people for hearings. And what I feel like, we as a town should be giving more preliminary information to applicants, even before they go to the zoning administrator.
Right.
And I say all this not having done it myself, so I don't, you know, it's not a fully informed opinion. But it seems like one thing would be to say, oh, so you're planning to, you know, redo your camp. Here's some resources that might help you prepare a solid
That's a
application.
good idea. We should just have a workshop in the winter when no applications are coming in.
Yeah, that's a good
Just
idea.
have to do a workshop, show people the maps, show
Yeah.
people what is expected of them, answer their
Right.
questions.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm happy to come back for things like, I mean, I'm happy to come back to whatever. but
People know
I'm happy to come
ahead of
back
time.
for an event like
Yeah,
that.
that's a good idea. Cause then it's so relevant to people.
Right, and then plus they show up at the DRB meeting, it's not like we're just like, you know, standing there with our gavel, and we have no idea
Yeah.
the person is. You know what I mean? It's like, we can talk about this, yeah, sweet,
Right.
let's get it done.
Yeah,
So the other thing that comes to mind, again, not able to make promises on this, but I do sit on, some sort of steering committee for the VCGI folks. And, if we had some consensus in the region, or I could even reach out to my other RPC contacts and say, like, if we had some general consensus on what those 5, 8, 10 layers were for zoning, maybe we can get a zoning theme on there.
yeah,
And, then I don't have to build a map viewer, my friends in Chittenden County don't have to build a map viewer, et cetera. Like, there's just a theme on the
Yeah.
atlas that
yeah,
captures most of what you want. And the nice thing about taking that approach would be that, if there was, or not if, when there is that special case where you need to look at some other data, you could, have access to it right there without having to sort of bounce back and forth between map
Yeah.
viewers. And I think that would be way more effective.
yeah. Do RPCs have like annual meet conference or something, or is it like an existing forum for that sort of
Yeah, so we do a few different things. So there's, the umbrella organization called VAPTA, Vermont, oh man, I should definitely know what that means. It's the umbrella organization for all the RPCs in the state.
Yeah.
And the directors meet monthly to talk about issues.
Yeah,
I've helped convene a RPC GIS users meeting the last couple of years.
yeah,
So we do that, and we're right now working on regional future land use maps.
Mhm.
And so we've actually been meeting monthly to talk about the future land use maps.
yeah,
And then I meet with the VCGI steering committee once a month as well.
Yeah.
And, you know, we frequently talk about use cases for the data
yeah,
so that when it's budget season, we don't have someone say, oh, what's this? We don't need any of that.
yeah,
We said, well, no, actually, you know, we had 400,000 unique page views on the geodata portal last year. Like, obviously, somebody sees some value in
right,
what the state's putting out there. So,
yeah,
we're always looking for new use cases,
Yeah.
and I think this could be a really good one.
yeah. Well, it's amazing what's out here, and I feel like, I'm sure there are plenty of people using it to its full capacity, but I feel like I need to learn.
And we had one guy in town, he made all those maps.
Oh, right.
He loves maps and, has been following along for quite a while.
Who is that?
John.
John,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
I love a paper map, like I still pick up the Vermont map, cause when I go
Oh, yeah.
somewhere, I like it. Like
Oh, absolutely.
Google just says go left, right, it's like, I want the big, am I going north or west? I wanna know these things.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
Still love the gazetteer.
Yes, exactly,
It even works when there's not cell service.
yes. exactly.
Just gotta start the map before you go.
Yeah,
Don't change it.
yeah,
Yeah, well, I'm happy to help, you know, it's part of my job,
Yeah.
to do this kind of work, so, don't hesitate to
okay,
reach back out with additional questions. You know, you have a chance to view the recording
Yeah.
again if you're brave enough, and, again, explore your own property, explore a couple
Yeah.
of recent permit decisions.
yeah,
You know, kick the tires a little bit, and as you have questions, definitely reach
Okay.
out.
okay. And maybe the next time we meet as a board, we can just suggest that to people too. I mean, we can put it in the minutes, but I think.
Well, and is there an opportunity for us to use, like, put the map up here during deliberations and step through
That's a good question, like I don't, like in
what we're
terms
talking
of
about?
being a hearing, I guess there's no reason we couldn't show a map and have an applicant explain, right, that this.
Or I'm just thinking about throwing deliberations when the applicant's gone and we're trying to make a
Right,
decision.
yes,
We should
exactly.
be able to pull the map up on this TV and, you know,
Yeah,
That would.
that's
that
a
would be
really
good.
good approach.
and I'll help.
Oh,
So,
good, good,
because
good.
you obviously have knowledge of this, the expertise. But I'll do our own property and I'll look at that, these cows, that would be a good starting
Sure.
place for me. And then maybe I'll.
Just don't find anything wrong with that decision.
No.
Is that something we,
I've got enough roadblocks with that project.
Is it really slow?
I mean, it's just the uncertainty with federal funding is
Yeah.
causing
Everything.
me and, I mean, everybody, a lot of grief. It's my only project that I'm working on that is federally funded, so it's not
Yeah.
that it jeopardizes my position, but, you know, we're working with a small construction firm and I need to
Yeah.
know that they're gonna get paid before I'm
Yeah,
confident in telling them to go ahead with things, so.
yeah,
That's the sort of ugly position we find ourselves in, but we're in good shape.
yeah.
I mean, the federal government wouldn't not pay contractors, right?
Oh, no, never, right?
Consider who's in charge.
Yeah. So,
Function of government.
okay, well, thanks again,
Thank
Paul.
you
Yeah,
so
this is great.
Yeah, thanks.
I'll send the presentation to you tomorrow morning, and if you can get that out to the rest of the team. And my contact information is in there, so
Okay.
everyone will have access to that.
And if people can just contact you directly if they have a question?
Yeah, fine.
Okay.
Yep, and either I'll answer or, my colleague Pamela,
Okay,
who I'm, training up on GIS, will answer, but two of us will respond.
great.
Yeah, no, that answers why there's so many things that look almost the same, but they're different.
Yes.
Like, cause I started my first week here, the Vermont parcel viewer became my best friend.
Right. When you're looking for.
Then I started looking at these other maps and they're all curiously look almost the same, like, what's the difference here, but good to know.
Yeah,
the
basically,
genealogy of that.
basically built under the same wrapper. just
Yeah.
Different subsets of the data and occasionally a little bit different functionality.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, good night all.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
Goodbye, Zoom.
So immediately.